Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Library of the Weird. I hope your day is as sunny as mine. I really wanted to deep clean my apartment today, but I also want to go hiking when the weather is this good. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But I don't think you're here to hear me talk about my day. You're here for books, and the book I brought to you today is Bad Cree by Jessica Johns. Bad Cree is a horror novel focusing on Cree people. It's also written by a Cree person. Jessica Johns is from Canada, living in... she's a member of the Sucker Creek First Nation in Treaty 8 territory in northern Alberta. I don't know very much about Cree, or at least I didn't know very much about them before I read this book, because books like that make me really interested in other cultures, especially in indigenous cultures. So for that, this book was really, really good. It was released this year, I believe in January. I found it through a newsletter, I believe. After I read the synopsis or the blurb on the back, I really wanted to read this book. It was first written as a short story, also titled Bad Cree, and as a short story it won the Writers' Trust McClelland and Stewart Journey Prize, which is a Canadian prize focusing on indigenous people, people of color, black people, and it won that prize in 2020. The book is focusing on Mackenzie, a Cree woman who lives, I think, in Vancouver. And in the first chapter, she wakes up from a dream where she was followed by a murder of crows. Waking up, she finds the skull or the severed head of a crow in her bed. And then it dissolves. And this is a common theme at the start of the book, that she's dreaming something and she takes something back from the dream that then vanishes. In another scene, she's like drowning, I think, and then she's waking up and she's still drowning. And that's quite interesting and quite exciting, I think. So she has in Vancouver, she has a very, very close friend who is a non-binary person, and I think this is maybe it's not the first, but maybe the second or third book I read where they/them pronouns are used, which I found pretty cool. It was kind of difficult to grasp at first, but I've read a lot of books with trans people or non-binary people, but they're mostly set in the past. So they/them pronouns weren't a thing then. And I thought it was very cool that Jessica Johns uses pronouns in here. After she tells her close friend of these dreams, she wants to go back home to Alberta, I think, back to her family, because in her dreams, she's always revisiting one evening she had together with her sisters at a camping site on a lake, and especially one sister, Sabrina, who died after Mackenzie left for Vancouver, plays a very, very big role in those themes. And yeah, she goes back to her family because she thinks, okay, maybe the dream is telling her, or the dreams are telling her, that she has to go back home, and maybe the dreams will leave her alone. And maybe you can guess, but the dreams won't leave her alone. And I'll leave the synopsis at that because I don't want to spoil any more of this book. And as you may have noticed from my talking, one of the major themes in this book is family. The other, at least in my opinion, the other big theme is death or loss. And then there are more subtle sub-themes, for example, Cree identity, coming of age and nature. But I think family is by far the biggest theme. Mackenzie comes back to her family, and they're living in one house. All the members of her family are kind of living in one house. She has multiple aunts, she has sisters, she has a father. There's a very, very strong focus on women. In my head, I can think of two male people who are in this book. One is Mackenzie's father, and the other is her boss. And those family interactions play a huge role in this book. Like, Mackenzie left her family after her grandmother, who is called Kokum, which is the Cree word for grandmother, I believe, in this book. She left her family after the death of her grandma, but before the death of Sabrina, her sister. And she wasn't even at the funeral for her sister. And this has led to tensions, for example, with the twin sister of Sabrina. She's very rarely talked to the other members of her family. She only started contacting them again after she had those dreams again and again and again. And these, like I said, these family interactions are, in my opinion, the biggest theme in this book. And like I said, the other big theme in this book is death and loss, which ties very, very closely to the family theme, because both the death of Kokum and the death of Sabrina very much changed the family dynamics, and they changed Mackenzie and her relationships with other family members, and especially her leaving and not dealing with the death of family members or people close to her. And the other themes in here, which I mentioned in the beginning, one of them is Cree identity. The book is called Bad Cree, and Mackenzie says again and again in this book that she's kind of a bad Cree because that, and again, I don't know much about Cree people. Family plays a huge role, and is a huge role in Cree identity, and she just left her family, so she's obviously a bad Cree. Then there's the coming of age part. I don't remember how old Mackenzie is, but I think she's in her early 20s or something like that. And throughout the story, through dealing with death, she kind of grows as a person. And the last of the smaller themes is nature. I think it's not that obvious. It's more obvious in the latter half of the book. But it also ties into Cree identity, like maintaining your identity in a city like Vancouver, and dealing with the mix of tradition, nature on one side, and big city life and modernity on the other side. And I think all of these are huge themes that are not independent from each other. They all kind of work together. The book itself is, like I said, a horror story. I don't have like the background or the tools to really talk about this, but I think this book is very much more on the literary side of literature than on the genre side, because these human interactions and the themes are way more important than the plot. The plot is interesting as well. The plot is even exciting, intense, and all these things, but I do believe that the themes are way more important. You could also, in my opinion, call this novel magical realism, because most of the story is very, very real. It could happen right now in any city on the world, but there's tiny bits of fantastical elements in here. One of these is, of course, the dream sequences where Mackenzie brings something back from the dreams. And in the second part of the book, or the second half of the book, this becomes more and more pronounced. And because of that, I would call this magical realism. I very much enjoyed the dream sequences. I'm a huge fan of dream sequences, also in other books or in other stories. And I think these were written really, really well. You always know, okay, now you're in a dream, because I think this book is written in first person, and I think that the dream sequences are written kind of different. I think they're also first person, but you instantly notice, okay, now you're in a dream. And I think the use of first person in this book is really, really good, because I believe that first person is the best writing perspective to write about human interaction, about the human condition, about interpersonal relationships. So I think that was really, really well done. This book is a bit of a slow burn, so it's not like exciting through and through. It's not really a page turner, but like I said, I think this book is more on the literary side. So it's much more about exploring the themes. And for this, the book doesn't have to be fast. Another cool thing about this book is Jones uses a lot of Cree words in here that you can look up in the Cree dictionary, which you can find online. But most of these become understandable through context. And what I found really, really interesting is that you don't have numbers above the, or you do have numbers above the chapters, but in Cree. And I couldn't. I always had to look up. Okay, which chapter am I reading right now? Because of course I can't speak and I can't read Cree, but I learned a lot about Cree culture in this book. And I think this is the last I wanted to say about this book. I liked it a lot. I think it was really, really good. It was really well written, and it explored themes that were super interesting to me. I learned a lot about Cree culture. I may or may not have ordered books about Cree after reading this. So yeah, I really urge you to read this as well. If you have already read it, please comment down below and tell me your opinion about it. I'm really interested in that. And with that, I hopefully start cleaning now. And then I'm going for a walk outside. And yeah, see you next week. Goodbye.